Hey everyone, welcome back to FotR Appendices. I am Istari and I'm here yet again to react to The Lord of the Rings, the behind the scenes, the appendices, and we are now on Designing Middle-earth. So I am excited to just get back into the flow of things. I appreciate you guys joining me. So let's just go ahead and get right into it, okay? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, let's flow. Hey everyone, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but most people don't go to my community posts, and this is something that really needs to be said because I'm facing an issue with the Two Towers videos. I haven't had to deal with 8 to 10 minute trims before, but that's what's happening. That's what happened in the last video, which is why it took so long to edit and then re-edit and re-edit. And so that's why I'm now offering the uncut versions for channel members. If you're not a channel member, I am still going to do my best to get these videos unblocked. Right now it's blocked, and I'm coming back to do a re-edit, which is why I'm able to include this in the intro really quickly. As you can see, if I trim out everything that they have claimed, then there will be nothing left of the video except for my intro and my end review. So I'm just going to have to be really creative with the editing process. It's going to be less footage on the screen, but and you will be able to hear the voiceover, but that's better than it just not being nothing, in my opinion. Yeah, thank you so much for hanging in there with me. Hopefully the next video doesn't get tagged in this way, but who knows. I'm just putting the uncut versions available just, you know, as another option. All right, you guys, let me go ahead and finish this editing and let's flow. Designing Middle-earth.
The design team of The Lord of the Rings and
Hi, Peter.
in different forms are basically working continuously on the project.
I'm trying to tell
People
you.
would probably think that, you know, you design the film, you build the things you need, and then from that point on you don't need your designers anymore. And that's not the case at all. The designing of the movie continues all the way through post-production.
Oh,
and so
right.
Alan Lee, Jeremy Bennett, some of Richard Taylor's boys, you know, they're all continuously working on the film.
Okay.
The inspiration for the look of this film comes very much out of the imagination of Alan Lee and John Howe, which will be familiar to anybody who owns an illustrated copy of Tolkien, because it's their drawings and paintings which began the process of imagining what Tolkien's words would look like.
Right.
Peter actually got quite a good deal by hiring Alan and I, because he was able to dip into all this material that we'd spent a decade doing before. So he got, you know, 2 for the price of 1. It was really important that we share an office, because it would have been so ridiculous, each one of us, to lock ourselves away in a closed room. We found space in the Weta workshop.
A lot of that creative feeling that we
they
had
shared
in
an
our
office.
department
Interesting.
came from their room, because you just walked in there and there were hundreds of drawings.
There was more or less a demilitarized zone between the two of us, and I was continually shoving his junk back onto his side. It could be anything from a library book to an original illustration to half a cup of coffee.
Look at their
And
desks.
just pile all this stuff up. And
Wow,
I think
that's
I'm
amazing.
much more easily distracted than Alan, and I do like to try and keep some form of order around me.
Right. How can you though? With all of
To
those
keep my mind
different,
on what I'm doing. But
was it color
simply
pencils,
sat in
shading
there and
materials,
sketched away 10 hours a day,
paints,
5, 6
paintbrushes?
days a week.
I draw
Yikes.
very intuitively, in a way. I don't think too much about what I'm doing.
Okay.
So I'll
I
just
don't
kind
know
of start drawing
how
in the middle
you can
of a
possibly
huge
do it though.
sheet of
Maybe I
paper.
just think too much, because
And
my
just keep on
drawings
expanding
don't look
until
nothing like I
time runs
intend
out.
for them to look.
I would be working away on something
It's
for a
amazing.
while, and I'd lift my head, and Alan would have done this enormous fresco across
Okay.
5 pages.
What in the
I think I
world?
worked just a little bit quicker than Alan. That was my only saving grace.
Tolkien is a great, is really
fantastic.
a great visual writer. So he gives you a huge canvas. Our invented world of Middle-earth had to be kind of thought through from a conceptual stage, and then we really have to coordinate with each other so that we have this one look coming through.
From the outset, we wanted everything to feel like it was real and believable, and that the whole story might just be a prehistory of what exists in human mythology at the moment.
Yeah, they did a great job of making it feel real.
Was, in comparison to film 2, was certainly more cheerful. You had this fellowship, they're out on this adventure.
I don't know about
Everything
cheerful.
was, for a while at least,
I
was
felt
going
like
well. now
We're in
with Two
peril in
Towers,
every corner,
the
quite
world will
frankly.
be in, it's teetering. It could be over.
Cheerful.
It certainly has a more serious feel to it, and that is reflected in the colour palette of the film.
Yeah.
Our design meetings with Peter at this time were quite interesting because he'd invariably be away on location.
Peter was incredibly busy, particularly once we started filming.
Incredibly busy.
So what we had to do
That's an understatement.
was try to work out where the best part of the day.
There's more than one
get
Peter.
Our best opportunity.
Had to be.
We often used to chase him up mountains and on riverbanks. And
chase him up mountains and riverbanks.
Would turn up.
It wasn't really
That's
an
so funny.
ambush, but it was more just like setting the stuff up.
Yeah.
In the pathway of
right.
where he'd be going from set A to set B.
That
so
is hilarious. They had to ambush him in order to get some of his time. I'm trying to tell you.
Precious models and see the bits that were.
I would just be making up stuff just to be in his presence.
And sometimes he was in such a hurry.
Be like, what do you think about this bag?
I'll talk to you later, guys. And you go, oh, God, I know, because the next time he's going to be down the mountain over there. And so you have to pick up the table and trot down over there.
That is
sounds
so
really
funny.
Dramatic, but if we hadn't done it, we just wouldn't have the set ready. And we sometimes had the crew walking onto a set that was still wet, but we prided ourselves on never missing a deadline.
Dang, I heard that. She was like, look, the paint might still be wet, but it's going to be done. Oh, it's just too good. I needed to know that. Some, they're working down to the very last second.
Working on sets that are crammed together like the
nice camera action.
Hong Kong, it's like
and they still
painting,
working on the set.
Amazing feat. And you're walking through this maze of sets every day and wondering how they were going to get the next set on the lot.
Well, we call them studios, but
it's such a huge
big old
production.
warehouses, trying to baffle up
look at that warehouse.
The rain on the roof and blacking them out to try and make them work as studios.
Okay.
It felt a little bit like being a pioneer, and some of those early photographs of Hollywood actors creating magic out of raw materials, but you felt that was going on.
It's true.
Everything was there to help you really believe that you were back in.
They were literally creating the world from scratch.
When we shot Emmerdale, it was done on the side of Mount Ruapehu. It was actually just within a ski field that they call Whakapapa. The rock around that area
that
they
name,
were walking
Lord
on
have
was
mercy.
just amazing. It's very rough and dangerous looking.
It was ideal to shoot the scene in. But we needed that maze-like formation, which Whakapapa ski field had some
Please
of,
stop saying that.
But not enough.
We built a set that was flexible enough to be shot in many different ways to have Frodo and Sam wind their way through this maze of set.
The sort of task there was really to make rock that felt 100% as though you were still on the mountainside.
Make it.
We're dressing this
make it.
welded steel frame.
They made the rock.
Huge chunks of
course.
foam. Gives us a nice surface to work from.
That is
cast
fantastic.
most of the rocks that we used from cliffs around Wellington. And then we would reassemble them into all kinds of environments. The Greens Department, which were a bunch of tough guys, were managing to sort of shape the rocks to get them dressed to be coving up to these side walls of cliff. We built rollers on a lot of the rock work to be able to trundle them out of the way for the crew to be able to access different parts of the set.
You guys are so good. Yeah.
So, 3/4 of the time, people were just building rocks.
So good.
You have to doff your cap to the talent of the folks who could recreate rock formations. The lines
on
between
wheels.
real and fake
rock formations on real, on wheels.
And when you go to lean against it, the kind of the styrofoam. Sorry, we need a little. You fix that up with some paint.
Right, you forget. Oh my God, that is so good. There is no way in the world that I would have known that those were foam rocks. Let me tell you something. I thought they were in the mountains. Even as far as long as I have gotten into the behind the scenes, I didn't realize that those were fake rocks until they just now revealed it. That is something else. They can create anything.
Between the Emmenville and the Black Gate are still floating amongst the weeds.
Look at that illustration.
Early on, when we did our recce's, we were looking for the perfect Dead Marshes location.
Yeah.
We actually lowered the chopper down into this marsh area, and we realized that it was an amazing location, but there wasn't any solid ground.
So we're winging our way through
no solid
the Dead
ground.
Marshes, and we're actually
There's solid
seriously
ground. They're
thinking
standing
about
on
whether
solid ground.
this should be a backlot set. But I actually think it's one of those
It's just not a lot.
situations where we can achieve exactly what we want a little bit better in a backlot than actually trying to shoot here.
Oh,
The Dead Marshes
interesting.
were filmed in a parking lot.
I
and a
am
variety
done.
of
There is
parking
no
lots.
way in the
First
world.
and foremost on this
There's no
wet
way.
set
There's
that
no-
was initially used
they-
for outside the gates of Moria, and then it was switched over and made into the
A
Dead
wet
Marshes.
set.
That was set up
Interesting.
in the Hutt Valley next to a railway
How do they
station.
do that?
And we were filming, you know, Frodo, Sam, Gollum in the Dead Marshes. We had blue screens up. And every, 10 minutes or so, a train would go
The trains.
right next door. And people
Please
could actually look
stop
out the
it.
window of the
I
train and see
cannot.
us
We had
shooting,
the
but it
airplanes
literally
and of
was
course
right
the
beside
trains.
railway tracks. And,
Of course,
it's
like
kind of funny
public
because you could hear this
transportation.
train
I am
noise of
outdone.
passing trains on the soundtrack.
I am
Because of the time
outdone.
frame, we couldn't build a proper wet set, so we
That
built
was
it
just
out of
too good.
sandbags.
And then they showed the clip of the train
11,000
going by. Listen,
Basically, we
right in the middle
built
of
the
a
Dead
Middle-earth.
Marshes to look like the ones that were on location,
So
of various materials and mosses.
They brought in all of
I don't know
the-
why that
the
tickled
sort of
me so much,
flora
but that
of
was
particular
funny.
type of land.
So
Lord
mosses
have
and
mercy, you got the
sandbags
Metro
and
Link going through
laid
the,
down on
the
bottom of
set.
pool.
And then we had these tubes that were set up all
Okay.
along with gas, and
I
they
don't know
were
why
lit on
that's so
fire,
funny.
so they had all of these flames coming out of the water.
The idea was to basically use all this as the foreground and then generate, as a computer-generated map painting for the extent of the marshes.
That it gives us an incredibly realistic result. Peter,
That was digital?
wants Middle-earth to be as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
So what digital technology allows the map painter to do is go in and animate his own sky, animate the lighting effects, the shadows on the ground as the clouds move over. So there's a lot of subtle things you can do to really sell your painting.
Our challenge was to make it incredibly gloomy,
Yeah, it was
dark
gloomy.
overcast sky. So we came up with a scenario where there is a grey overcast cloud, but it has small breaks where you see little pools of light.
For the pickups, we built another Dead Marshes set on the backlot at Stone
Yep, this
Street
is just as good
for
as Fellowship
the
of the
spectral
Ring.
corpses close-ups.
It was thought at one time that they would be entirely digital, so that it was expected that the faces of the fallen warriors would then be composited into that. I suggested that we actually try to do that physically because I just think it's all better if you can achieve something physically.
So we had Richard Taylor make up some very realistic-looking silicon sort of dummies.
Oh my God.
Because we didn't really want to have people under the water having to hold their breath.
Yeah.
Once you had the spectral corpses all set up in the water, and you had
Because
that
that did
lovely
look
sort of
real, I have to say.
reflection of
That
them,
looked like
so
corpses.
see people come along, they'll be, oh yes, it's the Dead Marshes, yes, great, and they look and they go, whoa, did you see that?
Right. That was really clever. I'm glad they did that.
England is
As
devoid
opposed to the
of
digital.
a mythology, and I think
Because
Tolkien
that it added
yearned
that depth
for some
in
form
the
of
faces.
mythology
It looked
for
real,
Greenland.
like a real corpse.
And Rohan
Look at that
fulfills
drawing.
that role.
My
The
goodness.
Rohan culture always seems to me to be very much based on Norse, Scandinavian, Northern Europe civilizations. And that comes across in the book, and we really didn't want to deviate from that.
There was a sort of theory that we should think of them as Vikings of the plains, Vikings without ships, but with horses instead.
Tolkien had
Okay.
based on
Interesting.
loosely on
Very interesting.
We relied very, very heavily on whatever archaeological bits we could scrape together to help us. And they had this richness of culture which belongs to a relatively primitive people. And, for example, Theoden's helmet, it feels like it could go in an exhibit with the work from Sutton Hoo, and it wouldn't be out of place.
Tolkien describes Edoras very vividly in the books, and artists like John Howe and Alan Lee illustrated Edoras in the past.
It's an area that Tolkien would have been very, very familiar with from his readings of Beowulf. In Beowulf, there is a description of Heorot, which is Hrothgar's feast hall. It's not described in detail, but you do get some kind of impression of the size and the splendor.
Oh, interesting that they can come up with these illustrations just based off of the words.
Description.
Yeah, just off of the
Green hill
description.
rises upon the east.
A dike
So
and a mighty
talented.
wall and thorny upon a green
So
terrace.
amazing.
There stands
Look, I
aloft
can't
a
get
great
enough of just
hall of
watching
men,
the illustrations
and
come
it
to
seems
life
to my eyes that it is
conceptually.
So the situation
Just
was really
fantastic.
try to find a hill, a solitary hill that sits in front of snowy mountains. Now, you know, it's not that easy because, you know, hills don't usually just sort of pop up out of the ground like that.
Right.
We contracted a location scout named Dave Comer very early on. And after a long, long search, lo and behold, Dave came back with this
Location
photograph
scout.
of Mount Sunday.
He just happened to luck
Listen.
onto this place in the middle of the
Good
valley.
for you, sir.
Sure
Thank
enough,
you.
it's this hill that just rises up. You know,
Just
it was
out
just
and
so
about
perfect,
looking for
but
places
I knew I
to
had a bit
film.
of a
I
hard
hear
job
all of
selling
that.
it to the studio because this was going to be expensive if we were going to actually build Edoras on this location.
Okay.
So I then got Alan Lee to put a piece of tracing paper over the photograph and to actually draw a version of what the wall and the buildings would look like so you could look at it and see what the potential was.
So I remember on the original recce flying down through the clouds into the valley where Mount Sunday is
what an
situated.
experience.
We were in a helicopter flying over the edge of the plains of Rohan on a scout, and Alan had his little camera, and he was sort of absent-mindedly thinking he could lean out this window and had forgot that we were flying at about 100 miles an hour. So his camera case is somewhere still on the plains of Rohan. He's lucky he didn't lose more than the camera itself.
We were flying around.
Oh, I love the behind the scenes clips of just everybody who's working on
we
this.
just sort of walked around this hill and looked around and thought, my God, how on earth
You get to
are we
peek
gonna
into their
build
personality just a little
something on
bit.
this?
You could create some of that digitally, but being there, it gives it a reality that I think you couldn't capture, say, on a blue screen stage.
Yeah.
It's fairly breezy up here today.
Very
10 to
interesting.
15 knots.
We then discovered that this valley is like a wind funnel, and hugely strong winds just blast down this place. You know, they did a weather check, and it was like 3 days of the year with no wind.
Oh yeah, so you can't film there, right?
250 days with like 100 mile an hour.
There's no
winds.
way.
Like,
Is this where they
this
filmed?
isn't sounding too good.
And Peter said, well, I really like it. It really works for me, you know.
But you can't film with the wind like that.
Although it would be difficult, we could do it.
Dan Henner, Grant Major, our art
Oh, they
department,
built something to
heroes,
help
really.
with the wind?
They just said, no, we can do it. We can do it.
Listen,
This is all the
what a
construction
challenge.
we're doing at the top here.
He was like, no, I like this,
Sunday.
so we're going to have to
This is
figure this
probably
out.
one of the more complicated of the locations.
The conservation
How
department.
can
said that
all of
they
your
had permission
equipment
to
not
do
be
this
banging
building,
around
but we had to
everywhere?
leave it exactly
Because of the winds,
as
you know?
we found it.
We actually removed all the native tussock and vegetation.
The tussock grass had to be carefully lifted up, and we had to build a nursery to house these plants. For about 18 months, they were sort of tended with loving care.
You are kidding me, because they're going to put it back?
Photographs.
Lord have mercy, that was...
four-wheel drive track.
We got the New Zealand Army to help us.
They had to take care of it so they could put it
on
back.
top of this hill.
They were one-way roads, so you'd have to have traffic control just so if a truck was coming up the hill, nothing was coming down the hill.
We ended up building there all through the winter. We had a team of about 70 guys there for 6 months.
The Golden Hall had to be a steel
It's like
structure.
what they did with the Shire.
Like a 15-ton
Oh my
crane.
God.
But because it was dock land, we couldn't go and destroy the place. The buildings had to be designed and built to fit.
This is more than just like a set. They are like building homes. Like, did they have to strike these sets too? Take everything down after the filming?
A few farmers in the area, and we found a guy who
outdone.
Was able.
Another 3
This
weeks
is
till
so
our
good.
deadline. 2.5 weeks now.
To see,
and,
you know?
It's coming together really well. People have stepped up the pace somewhat. Just those final finishing touches done.
The Golden Hall is pretty well described as a huge meeting hall with lots of gold leaf embellishments.
Listen.
We designed the Rohan stables to be particularly grand. I mean, we wanted the stables to look as beautifully decorated as the Golden Hall itself was.
Peter's theory, and it's a very sound one, was that the Rohan would treat their horses probably better than they treated their families. And so it was important to have the stables right at the very top of the hill beside the Golden Hall.
Their very survival depends on these horses. Therefore, they would acquire a form of deification with a little of the loftiness that you find in a cathedral.
Deification, okay.
Yeah, we had a wonderful team of set dresses. And
it did seem very royal for the horses, like the way they treated them.
Barrows and
very interesting.
Some of the people on the crew did occasionally make the comment that the only way to reduce the scale of this production might be to actually break my fingers at any one point. But I don't think it was said in any seriousness.
We actually utilised the Rohan buildings as part of the infrastructure.
I love getting to see them talk about their experience. It's like we're living vicariously through them, which is what makes this documentary so just, on its own level, because I feel like I'm there.
What you see in the movie, it was actually a bunch of trestle tables where everyone sat and had lunch.
Every single actor that worked on that set, I think, will say it's one of their favorite sets.
It was the most uplifting place I've ever been to. It was the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
All of the wind and snow and rain and all that just sort of added to the real Rohan feeling, and all that's fuel for actors. The more that you're given to work with that's real, the easier it is to perform.
If you go back to the Valley now, you'll find no evidence that there was ever a film made there. The set has gone, the service roads that led up over this, onto this rocky outcrop have gone. And now it's just the sheep and the wind.
The sheep and the wind. Wow. Wow.
And building the interior of the Golden Hall.
All right, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop the editing for this particular video right here, and we can pick up with part 2 of Designing Middle-earth next week. Thank you so much for joining me. I was having a ball, as you can plainly see. I think it's safe to say that the behind the scenes for the Two Towers is just as good as the Fellowship of the Ring so far. I'm just as delighted and tickled and just surprised as I was in the Designing Middle-earth for Fellowship of the Ring. So, it just hasn't lost its appeal. It hasn't lost its pace. It's just so good, I have to say. I really want to start with the whole illustration part because they emphasize that a lot, and I really appreciate that they do that. I mentioned before that I'm really fascinated by artists, particularly illustrators, because I'm someone who has a very vivid imagination, and I think in pictures instead of words. And yet, for some reason, whenever I try to draw what I can see very clearly in my mind's eye, it just does not translate on to the paper. And I just don't understand it. For those of you who are illustrators, what am I missing? Because I can see it very clearly. I understand perspective and depth and shading and lighting, and I understand all of these different things, and yet I cannot seem to transfer what is in my mind's eye to the tips of my fingers in a way that produces exactly what I'm envisioning. And just like the other artists, how you're able to do that, I just don't understand where I'm skipping a beat. Because I should technically be able to do this, but I don't know. It feels like there's magic oozing out of your fingertips in order for you to recreate what is actually in your mind. Because I'm telling you, what comes out on paper is so abstract that it looks like I intentionally made an abstract picture, and I didn't. So I just don't understand what I'm missing. But I love every moment. I particularly love when they go from the illustration and then right into the manifestation of, that illustration where you can actually see it. They can have the beautiful pictures of the mountain, and then all of a sudden they'll cut to a scene of the actual mountain and it looks exactly like the illustration. Oh, I love it. And the forests, and then, you have the shaded black and white pictures of the forest, and then you cut to the actual forest itself, and it looks exactly like the illustration. I'm telling you, it's just so much talent everywhere, Of course, I got so tickled when they were talking about the train going through the set. It's like they meet so many different challenges, and just the idea of the public transportation being a challenge. It's just so funny to me. And at one point they had the challenge of building a set on a very breezy mountaintop, right? Then they say that the valley created like this wind tunnel, and I'm thinking, oh well, it's just not even worth the effort in order to try to, how are you going to contain this? But listen, Peter said, I like it, so we're going to make it happen. And that's what they did. Whatever Peter says goes. And they made it happen. You understand? I mean, it's just incredible to have that kind of power. And, you know, it all paid off, I have to say. But they had, I think at one point I said you have to be delusional and audacious in order to make this happen. And you really do, because my goodness, they pulled off such a massive project on, you know, such a massive scale. And, you know, I'm just loving every minute of it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I will see you guys next time with a part 2 of this designing Middle-earth. Okay. All right, you guys, until next time, let's flow.